These words will either offend a weak mind or attract a strong one. What is liberating truth? Liberating truth sparks and encourages critical thinking from its recipient. It also brings forth an understanding that expands, elevates, and liberates the minds of the recipients. It makes the people cognizant of their actual situation, which stirs their passion for finding solutions among themselves. Real truth awakens you so strongly that once you've been awakened, you cannot return to sleep because the truth won't allow you to do so. It is for these reasons that truth sets the mind free, and why receiving it makes a person no longer fit to be a slave. Most of the ideologies that Black people are now currently calling liberating truth does not meet this standard. Through the white society's monopoly over information that we receive, which allows them to control what we believe, they've literally dumbed down our minds in regards to what is Black liberation. We therefore place the title of Black liberating knowledge onto many feeble-minded ideologies. The worst example of this fact is when you witness Black people claiming to be dropping Black liberating knowledge while quoting scriptures from a Bible that was brutally beaten into the minds of our ancestors by their ungodly enslavers. That makes no sense at all. Then they attempt to make sense of this false claim by claiming that the Bible was originally written by we Africans in Ethiopia. The Bible did not reach Ethiopia until the year 341 AD. That was 16 years after the Romans wrote the fictional Bible in the year 325 AD. Before then, no pre-existing literature written before that Bible was the Bible as we now know it, because it was the Romans that created the Trinity, the Immaculate Conception, and Jesus being a Messiah. The Romans, ungodly Romans who routinely engaged in massive orgies and death sports, are the ones that wrote the Bible and created the false religion, not we Africans. Furthermore, if the Bible truly contained the empowering words of God, it would have been kept as far away as possible from our enslaved ancestors, instead of having been brutally forced upon them, as it in fact was. Nor would they have continued to sell millions of Bibles to us following slavery as they're presently doing. Today, millions of Bibles have been sold to we Africans. Many Black Christians attempt to hold on to the false religion of the Bible by claiming that Jesus is Black. But let's again look at the facts. If this is true that Jesus is Black, then this would make Jesus the worst Black traitor in world history, given that he didn't save us from the invasion, enslavement, oppression, discrimination, and that we've endured from the white society. If you open your eyes and look at all facts as they truly are, it becomes clear that the Bible does not contain Black liberating knowledge. Those Black people who do not critically think based upon all facts as they truly are cannot see that their beliefs makes no sense at all. They cannot see their mental change. The mental enslaved condition is also called thinking without actually thinking. The white society have got our people so mentally enslaved, they're telling the truth and stating facts now literally offends millions of Black people. Many Black people are afraid to look at facts as they truly are, so they never have to admit to themselves that it might be wrong. But those of us who do wake up does so because we've grown tired of believing in things that literally insults our own intelligence. The true fact is that Black people will never liberate ourselves by using the Bible. Black people will also never liberate ourselves using outdated foot march strategies against modern white racist systems. Black people will only liberate ourselves by gaining a clear, concise, and accurate understanding of our plight and condition, and by gaining an understanding of the subjugation tactics that are presently being deployed to keep us within our current condition, and then by developing the proper counter strategies that are necessary in order to liberate ourselves. That's how. Our core problem is that most of us don't have an accurate understanding of our plight and condition, nor do we understand the modern subjugation tactics that are presently being deployed against us by white oppressive forces. This ignorance on our part gives the white oppressors their greatest power and advantage over us. This is why those of us who knows the truth must teach African proverb. The most effective way to subjugate a people forever is by developing methods of subjugating them that goes beyond most of their comprehension. If they don't understand how they're being continually subjugated, it becomes invisible to them, and they can therefore they'll therefore demonstrate no resistance against their subjugation, and they can then be subjugated forever. To our own detriment, this is the hidden truth of what white oppressive forces have done to Black people. Although most Black people no longer experience the white racist subjugation tactics as our ancestors experienced, we are, however, still being subjugated by the white society. When the past blatant white racist subjugation tactics deployed against us in the past became morally and socially unacceptable with the changing times and resulted in unprecedented unified Black protests, the ruling white elites secretly implemented more stealthier designed subjugation systems against the Black population. More covert method of maintaining their white social dominance and control over the Black populations. Method more socially better for the changing times. Unlike the blatant white racist subjugation tactics of the past that Black people could easily recognize and therefore develop counter strategies against, today's current methods are not easily recognized, nor are they easily comprehended by the Black victims. Because of these covert subjugation tactics, the system of white supremacy now strives and operates like a well-oiled machine. White racism always prevails best when the Black victims no longer recognize how it works. We must learn of it and then develop our own counter strategies to overcome it. It's why our people must be educated about it before we can be liberated. The white society now subjugates Black people utilizing social sciences. Social science is one of the branches of science devoted to the study of human behavior, specifically how people interact with each other, behave, and develops as a society. Social science is used to steer a society toward the objective of the ruling elites. It's also used to shape the minds of targeted populations in ways benefiting the ruling class. This includes manipulating the collective minds of the Black population to think in ways that prevents us from engaging in acts of massive unified Black retribution against the white society. Although the white society now publicly professes equality for all of their citizens, in reality, they are secretly unrelentingly committed towards the preservation of their nation's white dominance over their Black population. There's also an immense concern of massive unified Black retribution that secretly exists among the ruling white elites, given the white society's long history of brutally mistreating and exploiting Black people. This unrelenting commitment towards maintaining their white social dominance over the Black population and concern of massive unified retribution resulted in white oppressive forces developing and deploying a social science program against the Black population. Because while oppressors, through their military strength, can invade and enslave a people, they cannot win their loyalty or sustain peace with them indefinitely, unless systems are put in place to control the oppressed, to keep them loyal. Because whenever people are held under long-term oppression, their collective aggressions towards their oppressors will continue to grow until acts of massive retribution becomes inevitable. The oppressed always eventually rebels. It's the inherent response within the collective human psyche whenever people are held under long-term oppression. To prevent these pending acts of massive black rebellion, white oppressive forces deploy a social science that manipulates the collective minds of the black population to think in ways that serves to protect the white society. Black people are not functioning based upon an accurate interpretation of the history shared between our racial group and the white society. And that it's clear to see. We are instead functioning based upon fraudulent propaganda that have been shrewdly embedded into our collective minds through the white society's monopoly over information that we receive. It's the true reason why many black people now perceives ourselves as being our own worst enemies and reveres and defends Caucasians in spite of a brutally horrific history of the contrary. This contradiction exists because black people are not functioning based upon an accurate interpretation of the history shared between our racial group and the white society. Black people are instead functioning based upon false narratives that have been repetitively fed into our minds by the white society. False narratives that have deliberately shifted black collective aggressions away from the white oppressive society and redirected it against ourselves. The nefarious practice is called socialized. Black people have been socialized by the white society. Socialized is when the dominant culture exploits their monopoly over the information that are fed into the minds of the subordinate populations to manipulate them to think and behave in ways that are beneficial to the dominant society. White social scientists describe this nefarious process as merely instilling a value system into the collective minds of the black population that makes us adhere to the existing infrastructure of the white dominant society. They first begin socializing us during our early education and development, when our minds are young and most impressionable, through an educational system that exalts primarily only whites while withholding most black racially affirming fact from us through our entire education development. This psychology conditions us to perceive ourselves through a false, inherent, inferior identity that psychologically assigns us to a subordinate status within the white dominant society. To restate that more simply, it makes us more accepting of our subordinate status, and it makes us feel subservient towards whites, which makes us more compliant with white dominance over our lives. The socializing process is then reapplied and reinforced throughout our entire lives through unrelenting media propaganda that keeps us believing the fraudulent, worst narratives about ourselves. Doing so demoralizes us, divides us, creates black self-loathing, and shifts black collective aggressions away from the white oppressive society and redirects it against ourselves. It also attacks the core foundation of what bonds us as a people, and we can then be ruled over forever. There's more. They also socialize us through those study results that constantly favors their racial group over ours. Haven't you considered just how cartoonishly unrealistic it actually is that virtually all study results that we receive favors whites over blacks? To have study results so one-sidedly favoring one racial group over another, as we're experiencing them favoring whites over blacks, is cartoonishly unrealistic. It's absurdly unrealistic. It's actually also fraudulent propaganda. It is a psychological warfare system that as a result of it, it is deliberately designed to instill the myth of white racial superiority into our subconscious minds. Through repetition, they subliminally embed the myth of white racial superiority into our minds And most of us don't even realize it's happening. It happens without most of our awareness, but it affects us. This makes us feel, again, subservient towards whites and more compliant with white dominance over our lives. Those of us who don't critically think never notices our mental change. Brothers and sisters, it's time to wake up to our reality. The time of believing in dumb shit is over.